Now let's understand the next concept, which is of functions or methods. We already have seen how we can use inbuilt methods to common classes like integer, string, all of that, right? Why all these methods are there? Obviously, we want to use it again and again. That is why. We can also create our own methods. So if we create our own methods with a particular name, one method is something which we have already created, which is having the name of main, right? So that's the method which is getting executed when you run the program. But you can also write other methods with other names, and you can simply call those methods with their names inside your main, so that that entire piece of code can be reused. Okay. And remember that whenever you create a method, always have this thing in mind that you are creating a method to reuse your code. So your method should only have a single concern. For example, you create a method which will add two variables. So let it just add two variables. Do a summation of two variables. Create another one for subtraction. Create another one for multiplication, right? If you want to just say operation, then that is not a really single concern for each method. Within your operation, you would want to do an addition, subtraction, multiplication, other things, right? So remember to always have a single concern for each method. Now I'm creating a new class for showing you the methods. So this will be called methods. And in this, again, I would just want to create main. And now I want to show you that within main, I can call other methods. So how do we create methods? Now remember that methods will be called by other methods. So you would either want to always make them public or change that settings. We will talk about that later on. But right now I'm just creating a public method. And since main is static, I have to make this static as well. This again, we are going to talk about in the next week. And now I want to add a return type over here. Let's consider that this method will return an integer, and this will add two variables, namely A and B. And what this will do is it's actually going to return A plus B. Simple. And now I want to call this from main. So I want to call this by name sum, and I want to pass two variables, 2 and 3. Let's see what happens. When I run this, nothing happens because there is no print statement. Okay, so either I print over here, so we do a systout and put this whole sum call within our system.println. And now when I print this, we will see that the sum is 5. Okay, why? Because it has returned an integer, which is the answer of addition of A and B. This is how we can create other methods and reuse this same method for any other task. So I can just do the same thing with other numbers. So I actually don't have to create different methods, or again and again, I don't have to, write the same A plus B again and again. So obviously A plus B is a very small thing, but what if, you wanted to actually do a lot of other work within this method and then just call that with different arguments. So this is a type of method which would take two arguments, but what if we want a method which would just not take any arguments? So for example, if I just have public static void announce. Okay, it doesn't do anything, it just announces something. Okay, I'll just write announcement. And if I call announce over here, and if I run this, you will see that it actually prints announcement just by calling announce from main. Okay, so this is not taking any parameters. This is taking two parameters. You can take one parameter, you can take any number of parameters. You can use these parameters over here. This method actually returns something. This method does not return anything. So I have written void over here. So these are the three types of functions which are there. The ones which don't take parameter, the ones which take parameters, the ones which return some data types. Okay, so this way you can create functions and reuse a set of lines again and again. Now what's the difference between creating a method and creating loops? Loops however many times you will tell it to run will run one after the other. But function you can actually call any number of times. So I could have actually used the sum method and then called the announce method, and then later on, after a lot of lines of code, I remember that now I want to actually sum 4 and 5, so I would just call sum again. So when I run this, some need not be called one after the other. That's the benefit of methods instead of loops. Now, the next important thing while we are working with methods is the concept of passing by values and passing by reference. As I said, that for example, we are passing a value of 3 in the name of x. Okay. So in Java, we have primitives like int x, which are passed by values. But if we have objects like arrays, they are passed by reference. Okay. So how does pass by value works? If I'm having a new method with the name of test and I'm passing the value of y in it, and I just increment y and I print that. But in my main, my x is equal to 3 and I call test x. So what will happen is that 3 will get passed, okay, and 3 will be incremented, and what will be output? 4, okay. And then in my main, if I just print this x again, what do you think? What would be x be? Would x be 3 or would x be 4? Now, if you consider this diagram, x is actually passed in this method with the name of y, okay, and this y is actually known as the function argument, okay, and x is actually the local variable. Now, y is the function argument. It is incrementing 3 to 4 and then it is printing 4, fine. But when you come back to main, actually this y does not exist in main. In main, only x exists, right? X did not change its value. Why? Because here the value of x is taken up by y. Y cannot change x's value, and x will have its own value 3. Even though we would have changed the name of y to x, let's say we had int x equal to 3, test x, and then here also test int x, x plus plus. It's not about the name. It's about the variable where it is used. This variable is the function argument, and whatever it changes does not affect the variable which is in the calling method, okay? But what about pass by reference? If we have an array, let's say we have an array x with the values 2 and 1, and we call this test with this particular array. And now in this, I changed the first element of the array. Now, how do we change the first element? We have this square brackets, and in this square brackets, we pass the index of the element. Remember that in Java, arrays begin with the 0th index, okay? So 0 means the first element, okay? What was the first element? The first element is 2. That became 1, okay? Now, we just come out of this particular method, and now we are printing the first element in x. What do you think? Will the first element be 2 or will it be 1? Now here, the first element actually changed because of this change, and now the printing or the output would be 1. If you see that x and y both are pointing to the same object, and that's what we mean by pass by reference. Arrays, when I pass x to here in the name of y, y is actually the same as x. If I change y, then x also changes. So here now, x and y both are pointing to the object array 1 and 1. Now, if you do that over here, if I just change the variable a to 5, and before that, let me create an int sum equal to a plus b, and now I just want to return sum, okay? So what happens is that my sum is the same, but I just changed the value of a over here, okay? Now, the sum is actually going to print the same, but I actually want to see the value of a. So let's consider a was equal to 2, and that's what we passed over here. But now I want to print a again. Let me just comment out this part, and let's try to run this. Now, as you can see, sum is 2 plus 3, as usual 5, which we got. A became 5 over here, but now if we are printing a over here, we see that this 5 did not affect anything. We still have a equal to 2 only. Why? Because it is passed by value. What if we have b, which is an array of only one element, let's say 3. Okay. And here we are passing the first element of B, which is B square bracket 0. This is how we access the values within an array. If I send that, and now over here, if we change B0 not to be 4 instead of 3. Okay. Now let's try to print B0. If we run this, there is some exception. Okay. So here, this B is actually not an array. This B is just an integer. Okay. So I'll just change B to 4. This should change B0. Now let's try to run this. Now this is still 3. And why is that so? Let's think. Why is that so? It is because we did not pass an array, which is an object. We passed an integer. So again, it is a pass by value. What if I just want to pass B? That's it. I will pass B. Here, I have to change this to int square brackets B. So int B square bracket or int square bracket B, both of them are same. Now access B0. And here again, I will access B0, return the sum, and now try to print B0. Now when we run this, now we sent an array with an element of 3. We got the sum to be 5, which is 2 plus 3. But then when we came out of this, if I'm trying to access the first element in B, it is actually 4. Why? Because we changed that over here in the called method, and this is actually changing the value in this particular array. So this is the difference between pass by value and pass by reference. You just have to make sure that your method is actually not changing the values of any arrays which are being sent to you, or any strings which are being sent to you, because that is going to be passed by reference. Any primitive value would be passed by value.